Hey, Christine, open the chat.
5 minutes to live. All right, 1 minute to live.
All right, I believe we're live. Good morning or good evening based on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for being here today for our Tennessee Arts Integration Workshop from STEM to STEAM. My name is Brad Faust. I'm the District Fine Arts Specialist with Bartlett City Schools in Bartlett, Tennessee, and I'm the chairperson of the Tennessee Council of Visual and Performing Arts Supervisors. We're so happy you're here today to learn more about arts integration in STEAM. We promise to make today's presentation as interactive as possible, and we would like for all of you to participate with us through sending in questions and comments through a Facebook Live or the Facebook chat. We definitely want to have a conversation with you today and want to connect with everyone as much as we can on our meeting today. Today's workshop would not be possible without the generous donations of time and work from several people from these organizations you see here. The Tennessee Music Education Association, the Country Music Association Foundation, Tennessee Council of Visual and Performing Arts Supervisors, Weekly Arts Can, Bartlett City Schools, and Weekly County Schools, and the University of Tennessee at Martin Department of Music. Here's a quick overview of our schedule for today, which you've seen in the workshop flyer. In just a few moments, we'll begin with our first session of the day, Impact of Arts Integrated Schools. Then we'll take a short break for lunch and we'll come back for a Zoom lunch with Weekly Arts Can, a wonderful arts advocacy organization working in Northwest Tennessee. And then we'll move into our afternoon session with featured presenters, Jamin Carter from the Kennedy Center and Focus 5, and James Wells, the Innovation Teaching and Learning Manager with Crayola. Along with the wonderful presentations we have in store for you today, we have some great prizes, and we're not going to tell you what they are just yet, but trust me, along with presentations, you will want to stick around for these wonderful prizes that we will be giving away throughout the day. We'll be talking more about those a little bit later. Now let's take a moment to look and see who's with us today. As you can see here, we have people attending from 3 countries, 9 states in the United States, 45 school districts in Tennessee, 187 total schools, and 457 participants, which is just an awesome number. And we want to give a special shout out to the headmistress of Caloric Public Schools in Gujarat, India, Sumitri Ramasetti. She has about 40 of her staff online with us today. It is about 8:30 in the evening there in India. And so we wish you all a good evening there. Thank you so much for staying up late into the evening to join us for this workshop. And here's our quick overview that you've also seen in the workshop flyer of all of our wonderful presenters and facilitators for today. We'll be meeting all of these people a little bit later on, and you have their bios available in the workshop program. Make sure to hashtag us on social media today and following the workshop. We've seen some of you are using the picture frames on Facebook, which is wonderful. Hashtag us at TN Arts Integration or hashtag Arts Are Essential. We will be looking at those hashtags and to gauge the impact of today's workshop and hopefully to see how you may be planning to use some of the wonderful strategies and tips you learned today in our workshop. Before we get into our morning session, I would like to tell you just a little bit about Bartlett Elementary School, the home school of our 3 presenters for this morning session. As you can see in this picture, in 2019, Bartlett Elementary School was designated as a Tennessee Reward School by the Tennessee Department of Education based on their student achievement. Bartlett Elementary School has been working on building an arts integration program in their school for the better part of 10 years. And we're blessed to have 3 of their teachers online with us today to discuss that program. Along with being an arts integrated school, Bartlett Elementary is also a STEAM school, so that adds another component to the way they incorporate arts into other subject areas, which we will be discussing. At Bartlett Elementary and in Bartlett City Schools, we follow the Kennedy Center Changing Education Through the Arts integration approach. And our programs in Bartlett have been funded by the U.S. Department of Education and are currently being funded through an Arts 360 grant program from the Tennessee Arts Commission. The Arts Commission in Tennessee is a generous funder of arts and arts integration programs, and we can't thank them enough for their support throughout the years. Very quickly, here's a couple of more slides before we start to introduce our presenters for today. Here's the Kennedy Center's definition for arts integration that all of the schools that practice this approach to teaching in Bartlett use. This is a research-based definition, and you can see the language there is very intentional on how words are used, and each word has its own meaning. And this would be the subject of another workshop to explore this definition. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can Google Defining Arts Integration Kennedy Center, and they have a wonderful document available that covers this definition in detail and provides some research behind how this definition was written. And finally, before we move into presentations for the morning session, here's something to consider as we go through today's workshop. The Kennedy Center defines the three ways that the arts are taught in schools. The first way is arts as curriculum. That would be a highly qualified, degreed music teacher, art teacher, dance teacher, theater teacher, teaching that arts content aligned with state arts standards. Another example is through the arts enhanced curriculum. An example of that would be an elementary classroom teacher using the song 50 Nifty United States to teach the names of the states. And then the third way the arts are taught in schools is through arts integrated curriculum. This is where teachers would consider standards in and outside an arts area and create alignment between those standards. And then students, whether they're in an arts classroom or outside an arts classroom, would show their understanding through an art form. And that is the type of arts in schools approach we will be discussing in our morning session. And now I'm going to introduce our co-facilitator for this morning session, Amanda Galbraith. She is an elementary art teacher at Ellendale Elementary School and also works with the Arts Administration track with the Tennessee Arts Academy. So Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for walking us through a big picture view of arts integration. Next, we will explore what arts integration looks like at the school level. Today, as Brad mentioned, we have 3 teachers joining from Bartlett Elementary School here to share their experiences. First, we will hear from Christine Hughes, who is a music teacher at Bartlett Elementary, where she brings excitement and a love of music to her students. Next, we will hear from Amber Stanley, who is a 4th grade teacher at Bartlett Elementary School with amazing ideas and the willingness to share them. Finally, we will hear from Allison Swanger, a visual art teacher at Bartlett Elementary School, where her heart overflows with love, organization, and collaboration. I am so inspired by each of these educators, and I hope you will be as well. Christine, we are looking forward to what you are going to share. Brad, I think you might have to stop your screen share to let Christine share her screen. I'm also thinking the screen might be frozen because as you were talking, the slides were not changing. So we may have some technical issues. Hopefully stopping the screen share and turning it to Christine should fix it.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, you're
Okay.
good.
Great. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Amanda, for that lovely introduction. As Amanda said, my name is Christine Hughes, and I'm excited to share with you all some of my very impactful experiences with arts integrated teaching. So hopefully my first slide is here. Yay, so far so good. We're working. So curriculum-based readers theater is the first strategy that I would like to talk about. And this is a teaching strategy designed to embed academic content into a script that is written and performed by students. It was presented to Shelby County Schools Arts Integration team members, of which I was a part in 2011, by Dr. Rosalind Flynn. She is the author of the book called Dramatizing the Content. The workshop was on a Saturday, and every single teacher who participated said, "Oh, I can do this on Monday." So with CBRT, the students discover a topic. And if the topic is particularly thick with vocabulary, like the parts of a cell, or involves things being in a certain order, like the water cycle, it could present a great opportunity for a reader's theater piece. So there is a guided process through which the students write the script. They add stage directions like gestures and sound effects to emphasize key information. And as they practice, they are continually writing, revising, restating, and rehearsing what they know. So it's amazingly effective for them to really embed new content. Here we go. So this slide has a picture of the children's literature, Follow the Drinking Gourd. I decided to have my students write a CBRT script inspired by this book. I like to introduce it in Black History Month, and it's about American slaves using music to communicate in code as they escaped to the North, escaped from the South to seek freedom in the North. My learning target involved students understanding practical uses for music in history. Each class wrote scripts and performed it for their peers in other classes, and the work was highly successful. I've used this strategy for years now, and I always find it really effective. And I'm always blown away by how each class really makes this project their own. So on the right-hand side of this slide, you will see a script that one of my classes wrote. There are certain protocols about the structure and the page layout of the script, and we can talk more about that later if you're interested. But I want to move on to a little story about this. A colleague of mine wanted to have her students perform a reader's theater script and add musical instruments to their performance. So I was completely game and helped her map out what she wanted to do. Well, I soon discovered that she was trying to use this performance as a flashy way to impress some bigwigs who were coming to observe her class. And so even though I totally understood wanting to have a really impactful performance to show off, I knew that the real magic of students having discoveries and communicating ideas, supporting their opinions with facts, and trying things out, revising their work, all of this really happens in the creative process, not so much at the end when the work is done. So, I mean, yes, the performance is important, but the creativity and grit are all really demonstrated in the middle of the work. So I convinced her to allow the observer to be there for the process, to see the children selecting instrument sounds to emphasize the text and justifying why they made their choices. They demonstrated their comprehension so expressively, and her eyes just got so wide. I could tell that the light bulb really went off for her. The musical element was not just the spit and polish that you put on the end when everything else is done. It is integral to the learning. So now I want to talk a little bit about the water dance, which was another lesson that I incorporated into my music class using a book. So I attended this great session at the Tennessee Arts Academy where we used our bodies to create various cloud formations. And it struck me that adding this kinesthetic component to science really brought it to life. So I found this book called The Water Dance and incorporated it into a 3rd grade lesson. in which my students used movement to become various stages of the water cycle. I collaborate with third grade teachers every year on this topic so that my movement unit complements their learning. So sometimes I notice when my students are becoming these shapes in nature that they are looking to me and each other to see if their movement choices are right or correct. At first, their bodies mirror each other a lot. There's a lot of sameness in the room, but as they get more comfortable with expressing themselves, they start to show a lot more individuality and confidence. To be honest, I don't always know what they're trying to say with their body shapes, but their facial expressions reveal a lot. I love to see them let go and be bold. In this first slide on the left, they are a storm, and you can see a lot of forward movement. It's kind of aggressive, teeth are being bared. And then on the slide on the right, they are becoming a rainbow. So there's a lot of symmetry and stillness and calmness in some kids who are never calm, but they know how to be a rainbow. So finally, I wanted to talk just a moment about the Read to Be Ready summer camp. And the Bartlett Elementary School was selected to be one of Tennessee's Read to Be Ready summer camp sites. This endeavor is funded by the state of Tennessee, and it is designed to provide intervention and additional practice for struggling readers free of charge. It is completely run by teachers from our district, and recently I volunteered to provide an arts integration component by supporting reading with music. I was doing this as a part of an internship, but we had some arts integration funding as well. And so we were able to have this lovely dancer, Noelia, from Memphis's New Ballet Ensemble, incorporate dance as well. And you can see her there in the picture. So that was a really wonderful component to add. We looked at the books that they were planning to use in the program and designed arts integrated lessons around them. Not only did the students really love and enjoy the variety that it added to the program, but our assessment showed gains in both comprehension and fluency. I like to think it was due to the arts integration component that we added. And that's it.
Thank you, Christine. We will now hear from fourth grade teacher Amber Stanley.
Kind of make sure I can do this correctly today, sharing my screen. All right, thank you for the great introduction, Amanda, as well. I'm just the regular education classroom teacher. I couldn't do any of the arts integrated lessons that I do on a weekly basis without the support of my colleagues, Christine, who you just heard from, and Allison, who you'll hear from after me. So this is just a couple of my lessons and how important I think it is in the regular classroom. And how I like to say how I was sold on the idea of arts integration, because every year, every summer, we as general education classroom teachers, there's so many changes, there's so many updates, there's so many new computer programs that we sometimes feel overwhelmed. So when I was first brought onto the AI team, I thought, well, what else are they wanting me to learn? What else are they wanting me to do? So this is how I was sold. Instead of more worksheets and this and that, arts integrated lessons replace sometimes many lessons because of the engaging activities. So I was skeptical at first, and I thought it was just another thing. I quickly realized that it was planning more and teaching less, reteaching. And I'm a co-teacher, so I have about 22 children, and about 5 or 7 usually are SPED. So there's a lot of reteaching and reassessing with both both types of students. So this to me is the best way to teach in my classroom. And it just makes it more memorable in the classroom. But why do I use arts when I teach? For student engagement. It's an effective learning, more effective learning of the standard. There's less reteaching. It makes the learning more meaningful. And I've always planned backwards as a teacher. So I always, what's the standard? What do I need them to know at the end of the lesson? And then I plan backwards from there. So arts integrated lessons are definitely more planning. But when you repeat the same fun arts integrated lessons every year, it just becomes easier. You just have more tools in your backpack. But I was very undereducated in the visual art vocabulary. So I lean on Allison a lot, and I'm very undereducated in the musical vocabulary department. So I lean on Christine a lot, and I lean on Google a lot. And these are some links that I go to every year. I like to pull some of the grade level vocabulary for if I'm teaching fourth grade. I pull this link right here to the visual art vocabulary. There's a lot of visual art vocabulary in there that are some college vocabulary words. So I like to pull the grade level words and print them on a poster and have them hanging on my wall so students can easily look up and pull that term that they need for visual art, music, and drama. And I was amazed. The very first arts integrated lesson I taught, I'm like, how did you know that? Who taught you that? And they were like, Miss Hughes. And it just makes my lesson easier because they're already engaged. They know they're about to have fun. So here's one example of one of the math ones that I do every year, whether it's third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, because it's just a little higher or a little lower, but they still have to learn this standard. So P.A. Mondrian, which Allison had to teach me how to say that name many years ago. And I use it every year, and he's, a cool looking dude. So I always pull this picture up and the kids are like, what are we doing? There's a man on our screen on our Apple TV, but that looks pretty cool behind him. So I usually pull up something like this, to get them interested. I think my slides are out of order, but this is just the big picture. Why is it important to know how to calculate area and perimeter? All of the normal objectives and stating your standards and all those things. How do you incorporate, how would you use this every day? The real world application of why do I need to know this? And the why. So in the first lesson, I always show his bio and show his artwork and have a short conversation about tile flooring. So I pull in sewing and lace around the rug instead of the area of the rug, even though we teach both, calculation of both. So it's multiple days of application of this lesson, but I'll show you here. Bartlett City Schools, this is their pacing guide. So the fourth quarter, they give us 44 days. Measurement and data, they give us 2 weeks for the students to master the standard. So instead of workbooks and worksheets and all of the things, the Bartlett City Schools, that the materials they give us to teach math and the teacher created resources, this gives me 2 weeks to do this art lesson, as long as by the end of the 2 weeks I have the standard taught. So I stick with what the district gives me and what I'm forced to use, but I'm given the autonomy when I use the arts integrated lesson. So I'll go back, this way. But I think this will be shared. So if anybody wants to use this exact lesson, these are just how we turn into the district our formal lessons that you'll have this in case anyone wants to use it. But assessment strategies, I always have a rubric so they know when I produce this piece, this is how I'm going to be assessed on the standard of calculating area and calculating perimeter. And at the end of every lesson, we write. It's a quick write or it's a multi-paragraph essay. So this is my student example. So as you can see, we used a ruler and we drew our squares and our rectangles, and we used our primary colors, right, Allison? Red and yellow and blue. And they had to measure each, I think it was 3 in the rubric to get it 90 to 100, and they had to calculate the area and perimeter of 3 squares. So then we write. As you can see, this student wrote a lot. So they were asked to write a reflection piece on what they learned about the artist, and then instructions on how to calculate area and perimeter. And I love this lesson. We do it every year, and we hang it in the hall, and it looks beautiful. Here's a arts integrated lesson that we did last year for the first time. We're given new reading curriculum last year, so everything was new. Lots of planning, lots of upfront at-home planning, but like I said, it makes it easier in the end. But all of my students dressed up. At the end of the 9 weeks, we learn about the American Revolution for 9 weeks. We read novels, we read short stories, we have supplemental reading materials. And by the end of the 9 weeks, they are as involved in this time period as any child should ever be about the American Revolution. So they were very excited, and we dressed up, and I have a couple of books of readers theater that makes it really easy for me. So sometimes the scripts are already written. But our first quarter, here we go. Let me move on. This is one, but we can't get back into the school right now, so I couldn't get the actual book that I use, but there's a link right here where you can buy them pre-scripted for $10 or so. Another reader's theater we did this year was from a novel, The Whipping Boy, and you can get that reader's theater. There's the link right there for that. And Christine went into details about reader's theater, and we love that at Bartlett Elementary, so we use it often. Here's a lesson I did a few years ago, and it was, I've done it multiple years, but you have to collect coffee cans to make your drums. So we have a little visual art integrated into this lesson, but it was mainly a music arts integrated lesson. So like I said, we're given the reading curriculum that we're supposed to use. So for a few weeks, we were learning summarizing. So once again, here's where autonomy comes in. I've just picked a book that went with drumming, African drums, and it's actually read to you live. I forget the actor that reads it, but it's great. And there's the link to that. And then the music teacher on her planning period, which I know you're not always going to get that. They're busy just like us and planning, but she came in for about 5 minutes and started the lesson. And the kids picked it up right from there. They remembered her mini lesson from music class, and then we implemented it into the rest of the lesson. So she was able to leave and go have her lunch, and I will never forget. I will never forget her giving me that time. So here's the link to the African drumming lesson. And of course, we summarize the book. We write a mini quick write on the music lesson that Ms. Flowers had come in and taught us. Here's one I did with Allison, and you'll be hearing from her next. And this was the easiest arts integrated lesson I've ever done. And I do this a lot because she goes into such detail with her visual art lessons. And then I can just kind of steal everything she taught into a writing lesson. So in 4th and 5th grade, and this can apply to 6th grade and on when you're writing informative writing. So we said, what do you know about Wayne? I'm not going to say his name wrong again, Allison. Thibaud and his art after your art lesson this week. And please explain the steps you followed to recreate cakes. And these are beautiful art pieces that were created in Miss Swanger's art classroom, but then there's our writing sample there that we did in the classroom. So these are my takeaways. For my 6 years, I've been integrating the arts, and it's integrating art with other disciplines reaches students who might not otherwise be engaged in classwork. And we all know those students. It's the ADHD child, or it's the, like me, unless it was fun, I didn't want to do it. And the integration of art into the curriculum for subjects like math and science has been shown to increase understanding and retention, which as a classroom teacher, that's what we need. We need retention, because it makes for less reteach, reassess. And it aids in the development of creative problem-solving skills, which we all need when we grow up. And you plan more, reteach, reassess less. I hope I didn't talk too much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. That was wonderful. I'm seeing some questions in the chat about assessment, which we will get to a little later. But just a quick question for you, Amber. Are you self-contained or departmentalized?
I've been self-contained for 7 years. I'm moving to 5th grade next year where we're departmentalized. So I'll be ELA social studies, which I'm excited about. And then I'll team teach. I'll still be co-teach with the SPED kids in my room. And then I'll team teach with the teacher who teaches math and science.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you, Amber, for sharing your experiences with us. We will now hear from visual art teacher Allison Swanger. Allison, we can see you, but we can't hear you.
Can you see and hear me now? Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you for the introduction. I'm Allison Swanger, Bartlett Elementary School art teacher. I've had the privilege of working my whole career at a art integration school, elementary schools in the Memphis area, elementary and middle school, all Title I, meaning we have students that come from, a challenging economy, if that makes sense. But as an art teacher, I feel like I'm the on-site artist, and I try to find tangible ways to help incorporate what the teachers are teaching in their classroom in my room and vice versa. My classroom's it has a revolving door. Teachers are constantly coming in, asking for advice and ways to make the learning more fun and accessible to their variety of students. See how to change slides. Here's kind of a snapshot of my everyday. In the upper left-hand corner, I think one of my big jobs in an art integrated school is to make it look like the art integrated school without having to say it. The school can kind of speak for itself that the arts are valued. In the upper middle, with our grant that we got from, is it the Tennessee Arts Commission, Brad? Yeah.
Yes.
We made these metal bulletin boards, and every grade level is assigned a board, and every month they switch it out with art integrated lessons. So not only is the learning taking place, there's evidence of it, and I think it keeps the teachers encouraged and motivated to continue engaging their students in an artistic way. I'm also responsible for just keeping the school beautiful, and with the community activities that we host. So down at the bottom, there's like a Veterans Day. So we really want to show that we're an art school. And then of course I have my students and a community art project at the bottom. So we're just all about it. And every year we have an art show, and it just looks like art was just thrown up all over the place. It's amazing. And we have a real huge turnout from our community. So the community is bought in to this. Our PTO supports us financially to get the funding to do these art integrated projects, as well as the grants that provided the funds to purchase materials for every grade level. Every teacher has access to art materials on their art cart, grade level art cart. All right, so when I'm collaborating with my peers, we're most successful when they see the value in it. The students are excited and engaged. They always want to tell me, oh, Ms. Swanger, we're painting in art class, or we're doing this, we're doing that, or we were talking about value in art and we're talking about in the class. They just like to find those common denominators. They think it's magic, like we didn't do it on purpose. And there's evidence of academic growth. If the students, like with Miss Stanley, if they're understanding area and perimeter after doing a Mondrian lesson, I mean, you can kind of analyze that data. I mean, you can see evidence of their understanding. And when you're working with someone, you obviously, have to be flexible with the scheduling. All right. One specific way that teachers like to incorporate art into their lessons is their language arts, analyzing passages, finding using the descriptive language, the nouns and adjectives, to create a painting based on just the words on the page. So like students like mine that I have at home, my 8-year-old, he has very little interest in reading, sadly, but when he can get messy and hands-on, then he can start to pull out that information and put it into action, literally. This takes sleepy students and perks them up and gets them excited. So this example is, it was a 3rd grade lesson, and they were reading Sarah Plain and Tall, I believe across the grade level. And I think the teacher wanted to discuss, to get them engaged about the similarities and differences between the prairie and Maine. But we ended up just illustrating the prairie for this. I believe we used watercolor paint, maybe a little tempera paint. But it was a guided drawing. We just really analyzed the passage, and the kids had fun, and we brainstormed, made a big web, the prairie in the middle, and it was a sunny day, and the field was golden, and so on and so forth. All right, and childhood favorite, Pippi Longstocking. Same thing, 4th grade teacher called me in, and we just broke down I'm not good at the pedagogy when it comes to language arts, but I guess passage about Pippi and what she looked like, and really brought her to life through visual art. And then of course they they had a writing assignment that went with it as well. All right, and this is actually my daughter. I was trying to figure out how to, is it the color theory, and when all colors mix together, it makes white. And my students really didn't understand, because when we take all the paint and throw it together, it does not make white. So we made not a drill version, but a smaller version, adding a color wheel and spinning it real fast, so they got to see that white was produced. But some common topics that teachers ask me to help support them, their student understanding, is the concept of 3-dimensional form versus shape, tons of line, like parallel, perpendicular, vertical, horizontal, opaque, translucent, transparent. That's very easy to develop lessons around. And we use all of these anyway in the art room, but just putting the terminology with what we're already doing, I find it to be very helpful. And the teacher does too. And then, of course, color theory and Sir Isaac Newton and what the colors make. All right, so here's some examples of how we've used three-dimensional form. If you notice in the bottom right image, it's of course a barn, and it shows the horizon line. So we talk about horizontal lines, perpendicular lines, and how they all converge to a vanishing point. That's a second grade lesson, so it's kind of impressive when you can hear a 7-year-old talk about different types of lines and how it's used to create optical illusions. So when the classroom teacher was being observed, they were actually using this piece to write. I don't know how they used it in their classroom, but they were using it in their classroom, and they said the observer was very impressed with their vocabulary and their understanding of the terms. And then the two others, third on the bottom, fourth grade on the top, just understanding the shapes and lines used to create the three-dimensional forms and optical illusions. All right, and when I'm teaching, I obviously have a huge range of learners, as we all do, but my most challenging and most adorable, I can't be that partial, but she just challenges me. She can't see at all. She lost her sight, I think about 3 years old. So she has really no memory of the sighted world. And she wants to do, of course, everything that everybody else does, because why not? And it's not fair to just give her a piece of paper and say, draw a circle with circles in it. I mean, it's totally irrelevant to her. If I took all her projects from the year and they were all 2D, she wouldn't be able to tell one project from another, obviously. So over the years, she's become very, particular. She likes to come up with her material choices, and it's tricky when you have 20-something other students, but they all deserve to have a very engaging experience. So this was Wayne Thiebaud's Gumballs, Gumball Machines, and she did hers, of course, in a different way. And we talked about what we could use that was round to put the gumballs that she makes in them, and the base, how would we kind of make it a cone, and what materials to use. So here's a little video of the student kind of talking about what she's doing and her understanding of the terms. So play a little snippet of that.
Was it Model Magic Gumball?
Can y'all hear it?
And it's dried from a couple weeks ago. And you're putting it on a toothpick. And what color is that?
Red.
This is red. So you're swirling it around. Sure. And then you're swirling it around in what?
Can I have your tissue box?
What are you swirling it around in?
Glitter.
Glitter. And then you're taking the toothpick and you're letting it dry. Very nice. And why, instead of just painting it, do you want those different materials on top of the paint?
So I can feel it.
And when you feel it, can you feel differences? Which is your favorite? Do you like the red, the yellow, or the blue? Do you not have a favorite yet?
Not quite, because they're not all dry yet.
Not dry. Oh, so you haven't been able to feel it? Okay. And then we'll put them in this clear ornament for your version of this project. Yes. All right. Say bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
All right. So, have to find interesting, creative ways to engage all students. And so, we have the same learning objectives for this student as all of my other students. She just learns differently, and she can answer all of the questions pertaining to the project. She's just experiencing it in a different way, a different process. All right, and then here's another 5th grade lesson. It has the 3-dimensional form. It has the types of lines. I think this would be helpful when reading a map, understanding. We talk about north, south, east, and west, the compass rose, horizontal, vertical, perpendicular, and then how to create the illusion of a 3-dimensional space. And then this is also another video of this student, and it's basically just her talking about her understanding and her technique based on her unique challenges. All right, and the next, just a little snippet of this project. It was a language arts, science, and social studies, visual art, and music mashup. And it was Miss Hughes, who's here with us today, and a really cool 2nd grade teacher that likes to incorporate technology into her projects. Her students are very engaged. It's kind of wild, but it's fun. And they learn a lot, and they remember it. I mean, for a lifetime through these experiences. All right. So in my room, we're talking about sea turtle conservation, protecting wildlife. The students in this project worked in groups. They made a background for their clay turtle, and then they worked together after learning about sea turtles and their habitats in their classroom with their classroom teacher. All of that went into the project. I mean, the sea turtle anatomy, along with the habitat that they made the background for, or of. And then they wrote a play incorporating the information that they learned in their classroom. And so that kind of incorporated theater. And they made a class poster of all the information that they learned about. They were always teaching me new things like carapace and all these like different terms. I was like, wow. They also, I was having trouble in I don't know if it's Disney or a Pixar movie, probably Disney. I think it's the Count on Me song by Bruno Mars. And they were having trouble just learning the song and the words because we wanted some backup music for, I'm losing my train of thought, the credits for their video. So Miss Hughes helped rein in their vocals. I'm trying to play the video, but I think my little bar is on top of it. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. Here's a little snippet of her expertise. I couldn't do this part on my own.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll bring the light to guide you.
Picture it. Here we go. You got to picture all those parts.
You got to picture all those parts. So she really helped the kids put all their vocal talents together to make a beautiful musical piece for their projects. And here is their theater portion with it all put together. I'll play a little bit of that, and I'm sure my time is almost up. Oh.
Did you know plastic bags are very dangerous to us? This is because plastic bags floating in the ocean look like jellyfish, which is one of our favorite things to eat. The plastic bags can get stuck in our throat. Plastic bags can harm us or even kill us. People should take cloth bags to the beach. That way the plastic bags won't end up in our oceans. Please protect all of us sea turtles. We are very important. We have been on the earth for over 110 million years. We want to be around for 110 million more. The end. Did you know plastic bags are...
All right, so that was what they were working toward for like a month in my classroom, but probably very little in their general ed class. But it just enriched the lesson so much. And then, of course, they were on display at our art show. And they also had QR codes that the technology instructor helped us create. So their parents and the attendees at the show could just come and scan the QR code and hear their little Chatterpig video. This was just an individual scene that they took on iPads of just a solo version of the theater group performance that you just saw. Okay. Oh, and I guess that's the end. Your students can learn the arts as well as learn through the arts. And I feel like that's my job as an art teacher, as an educator. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Allison. Even though many of us have been away from the in-person classroom for a few months, hearing all of your presentations made it feel like it hasn't been that long. Thank you for sharing your insights and stories with us today. I'm seeing some questions for the presenters, so please keep adding those into the chat. We'll get to those at the end as time permits, and we'll explore ways to provide some follow-up if we don't get to all of the questions today. We're going to now move into a panel discussion. We've prepared 8 questions for our presenters, and to get started, we will start with Amber Stanley. Amber, will you think back to when you first started working with arts integration? Can you describe something you wish someone would have told you at this time?
Yeah, thinking back to many years ago when I first started working with arts integration, I wish someone would have told me that integrating the arts was not going to be something else on my plate as a classroom teacher. That's what classroom teachers are always afraid of. So many things change every year in education. Like I said earlier, I've been in a co-teach environment for many years, and that type of classroom requires a lot more planning, a little more teaching, a little more reteaching than a regular education classroom. So at first I was afraid arts integration was just going to be one more thing. And we all have that thought every year, one more test, one more benchmark, one more computer program, one more thing we need to learn. And it's not an additional means, an additional way, an additional strategy. It's a replacement of sometimes many of those things, not just one thing. So for me, not only have arts integrated lessons replaced a lesson, sometimes it replaces many lessons within the same standard.
Thank you, Amber, for that answer. I read a quote several years ago in a research article I was reading that says arts integration is not another thing on your plate, it is the plate. And I think what you said just illustrates that. It does really help to take the place of single lessons or several lessons, depending on how it's integrated. Our next question is also for you, Amber, about your students, and you've been involved in arts integrated teaching for several years. So think about how you've seen your students change in your work, and then maybe how your work has changed a little bit also.
Yeah, my students have changed working with arts integration because the learning is just more enjoyable. It's just that simple. It isn't just read the text, complete the worksheet, your grade turns up in PowerSchool for your parents to see. A lot of students don't retain knowledge that way, where with arts integration, students acquire a deeper and broader knowledge base. There are so many different types of learners: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and there's so many different teaching styles. We all have those teachers who are the same way every year: desks in rows, the authority style of teaching, demonstrator style of teaching, facilitator style of teaching, and then student-led environments, which is where we always want to lean towards. When you teach with arts integration, you're using a method of teaching where students can use skills they developed in art class with Allison and music class with Christine, and they're just more engaged. They're using different parts of their brains during the learning process. And for me, in the co-teach environment, it's especially important because I have many different learning disabilities in my classroom: ADHD, ADD, ODD, visual impairments, hearing impairments, speech impairments, and sometimes functional skills students are in the general education classroom with me. For these students, the retention of new standards is sometimes difficult, which requires reteaching and reassessing repeatedly. And you just do that less often when you teach with lessons that are arts integrated.
That's a really valuable perspective to hear, Amber. Thank you so much for sharing that. As you've been working with arts integration, I'm curious as to how you and your fellow teachers have engaged in professional learning and learning new knowledge and finding strategies. So our next question is for Amber and Christine. And Christine, if you'd like to start us off, describe the professional learning that has been the most beneficial for building your knowledge of arts integration.
Well, in my presentation earlier, I spoke about CBRT, or curriculum-based readers theater, and that moment when all the teachers said, "Oh yeah, I can do this on Monday." Well, I believe that we all developed that self-efficacy because we performed the whole process of learning, physically and mentally, experiencing what our students would experience in the classroom. So I guess we used arts integration to learn arts integration. We didn't just use one mode like reading. We moved, we made sound, we created, revised, practiced, and performed. It was so holistic. And we got it because we did it. It was literally in our bodies. In my experience, it's been workshops like that that give teachers the confidence to roll out new things to their students and believe that they can create the same magic in their classroom.
And I'll answer for me. We're very lucky to teach at a school that doesn't require every Wednesday to have a faculty meeting. If there's nothing to talk about, we handle everything via email, but we get to use that time on some of those faculty meeting days where we're supposed to set aside time to stay after school to have these art slams. And Allison and Christine hosted them, and the classroom teachers had takeaways every week. So that's probably the most in the building PD that I've gotten the most out of. I did have my notes here. Oh, my Tennessee Arts Academy at Belmont University. This is intense, 40-hour-a-week. You are immersed in the lesson. So like Christine was saying, the teacher does the entire lesson with the arts integration teacher. And I've had many lessons to take home. And also the Tennessee Arts Commission, we did, I have my notes here, at Austin Peay University in Clarksville, Tennessee. And that was hosted by the Center of Excellence for Creative Arts. And I was able to share all of that I learned back at our home school.
Thank you, Christine and Amber, and thank you for mentioning the Arts Academy, because in a few minutes we have a giveaway coming up that involves the Tennessee Arts Academy, which is online this year. Next question is for Christine and Allison, and this question centers on collaboration. This is something that often comes up when teachers and schools first start to delve into arts integration. Collaborating across a curriculum can be intimidating for some teachers. So talk about your strategies for getting that started at Bartlett Elementary.
Do you want to go, Allison, or should I go first?
Yeah, we'll take you first, Christine, and then
Okay.
we'll have Allison go after.
Okay, well, speaking from the point of view of an arts specialist, I have a certain amount of flexibility in my pacing. I can look at the pacing charts for various grade levels and see natural connections, and then adjust what I'm doing in my classroom so that I can create alignment. So I like to start there. Once I find a connection between what the students will be doing in the general ed classroom and something that I want to do in mine, I just approach a teacher or two for that grade level. I'd like to use email, but I'm a big just walk down and say, hey, person. So I just stick my head in the door and say, hey, I want to ask you about a thing I'm thinking about doing, and begin from there. So I'll ask the teacher for specifics like vocabulary words that I can weave into my lesson. And then I'll explain my process and ask how they think what I'm going to do might serve their learning objectives. So I use their feedback in my lesson design. And since my subject happens to be untested, I have the freedom to take overarching musical concepts and infuse them with details from science, social studies, or another subject. And when the teachers come to pick their class up from music, I take a minute then just to touch base, to show them what we did or have the students explain. And that way the teacher can refer to what happened in the music classroom and intentionally remind them of that connection when one occurs in their room.
All right, I think I'm gonna share my screen to share my answer to the collaboration question. Okay. Sometimes it just says, how do you begin? Where do you start? One way is to find a common planning time. Like Christine said, you can email, or they can go through my revolving door and just kind of touch base and figure out what we want to do. So it's using our schedule to our advantage. Sometimes I go down to their classroom to teach. Sometimes they come to my room while we're working on the art project. So we kind of tag team and maintain hope. It's just encouraging each other and being flexible. When challenges arise, you just kind of persevere through that. And sharing a growth mindset. We all have, when working together, we have the same goals where we want the students to end up, and we need to understand our part in that. And it really helps when you have administrative support, especially when we do those slams and they let us use the time that they would have for faculty meetings to let us present the information so teachers know their options and material understandings and different techniques just to understand art integration better. And then this is just a sample email of a teacher. I get these all the time. Such and such is happening. What can we do to work together? Another one here. Looks great. I'm in. Every quarter we have a theme, and every teacher kind of ties in the theme with their curriculum, and then they post what they do either outside their classroom or on our integration board. And so I work with teachers a lot during those times. And this was just an African theme. And we did our integration slam on this, understanding kente cloth, a little bit about the African culture, and then ways that we could take these ideas and put them into action. And here's just some examples of what teachers did in their classroom.
Thank you for that. So it sounds like the process is structured and organic and kind of runs the continuum. So there's plenty of times for short conversations and then longer sessions. So there's not one direct straight line path. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunities to enter into those collaborations. So thank you for sharing your experiences. The next question is for Christine. As you have already addressed a little bit through the collaboration, an additional component that several schools have is having a STEAM or a STEM, not yet STEAM program to collaborate with. So Christine, please talk us through how you've been able to collaborate with the STEAM coordinator at your school.
Yes, we are really fortunate at our school that the administration supports a STEAM model in which all students get to attend the class. So that gives our STEAM teacher a lot in common with fine arts specialists in that we see every child in the school. One helpful thing that our wonderful STEAM teacher, Jennifer Taylor, does is that she helps to connect student learning across the curriculum by sending out STEAM-specific vocabulary words for each grade level. This is just one document that she emails at the beginning of the year, and I print it off and keep it someplace close. So with this engineering language in hand, I'm able to incorporate it into our music work. For example, if we are talking about song form, I might utilize the word structure, and I see the light bulb go off in the student's eyes. And if we are composing, I might incorporate the word build, and they're able to make a magical connection in that way too. I am so blessed that I got to serve as the arts integration co-chair with Ms. Taylor, our STEAM teacher, and she attended lots of arts integration PD, was on board with everything we were trying to do. And because her class is all about connection and collaboration in order to create products, it seems like a natural connection.
Great, thank you, Christine. I've had the opportunity to witness firsthand the collaboration that goes on at Bartlett Elementary between STEAM and arts and the general ed classroom, and it really is something that is commendable on how the teachers all are willing to work together to make this program work. Our next question is for Allison. Allison, I know you've done a lot of work and a lot of PD and learning on working with students from special populations, and you showed us an example in your presentation earlier. So talk a little bit about how you implement considerations for your students from special populations.
I'm sorry. Little technical difficulty. Yes, special populations. It's just that little extra challenge that keeps me on my toes. They all have the same learning objectives that my other students have. We just have to get a little creative, and that's always fun. Here's just an example. It's actually Miss Hughes's son, Harvey. This is one of his paintings.
I thought I recognized it. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I think you have it on a little necklace. So her son, he just does his art in a different way. So I might give him a limited color palette instead of giving him 20 colors. Like for the background, we just gave him 3. Or for his sunglasses, their sunglass self-portrait, I cut out the shape of the glasses and left that a hole. And then he painted stripes on a paper in the background, and then we added the paper behind it. So it would be nice and neat and crisp. And then instead of just drawing the lines of the face, like just typical Pierce, we used a hot glue gun and a black crayon and just kind of melted the lines so he could feel his boundaries on the page. And just instead of just swiping the paint all over the place, he could feel that, have that little sensory kind of like stop button, just like, or stop line.
Yeah, like a little bit, it was a literal barrier.
Little barrier. And it really helped. I mean, it turned out great. He did a great job. And let's see. Oh, another one of Harvey's. It's the same thing. This is actually the project that Amber showed earlier. And it's just, I believe this one was a glue line. I do this with Dina if, my student that can't see, if she has to cut something out, I draw a glue line with hot glue so it dries very quickly for her for like a same day project. And she can just take her scissors and follow along the glue line. And then for Harvey Hughes, it was just a literal barrier with a limited color palette. And he chose his colors. I guess he was feeling pink this day. All right. And this is my student that can't see. She's very particular about her textures. I get it. She's not interested in color, obviously, unless it's pink or sparkles. She understands that because she likes to be girly. But she picked her texture. I mean, she'll ask me what color things are just because she wants to follow the project guidelines to pick a value of blue or explain your color choice. Like if you pick pink for a background sky color, they have to explain it's sunrise or sunset. So this was a combination of glue line, texture, fabric. I mean, you name it, this girl's gonna fit it into her project because she loves getting messy and being able to have that tactile experience. And I get it. I mean, we enjoy color. She enjoys texture. This was another example of a project, a 3rd grade project. We were doing a Memphis skyline, learning about our city, also talking about architecture and the role of an architect or an engineer, a little bit about our history of our city and it being on a river and transportation and commerce. And then Dina, my student that can't see, said she wanted to use foam and different widths, textures of paper. She cut out her rectangles and squares and strips. For the water, to make the texture of the water, she just cut out curved lined paper and glued it down below the horizon line that she created with a foam strip. So what I've learned with working with special populations of students, it's just more meaningful when students can make their own artistic decisions. It's all about flexibility. You have to find what works, what engages them, plugs them into the project. They have to buy into it. Just with teachers with collaboration, if they can't buy into it, it's not going to be effective. And then teaching students, especially with a visual impairment, you just have to find what's important to them. If color is irrelevant, if a flat surface is irrelevant, then there's no need to spend a lot of time on that. So just trying to reach your student in whatever way you can. Brainstorming. Sometimes I have to put a blindfold on and just touch and feel what I'm doing and seeing if that would even make sense with how I'm trying to explain things to her. So just trying to be creative and reach my students.
Thank you for that, Allison. As you were talking, I was thinking so many of those modifications are really neat, and I could see them appealing to a wide variety of student populations.
Some of my other students are like, well, I want to do it the way they're doing it. I'm like, well, we'll get to that in another year. So right now, let's work on a 2D surface. So, I mean, it's just.
Go ahead.
It's just, yeah.
I saw a comment from Jonah about something very similar. So speaking of comments, I'm seeing a lot of great questions in here, and I'm looking at time and hoping we can get to as many as we can. But we will figure out a way to follow up on things that we don't get to discuss in person today with people who have put in the chat. So thank you. Keep those coming. You are all asking good questions and having good thoughts. We are also wanting to spend some time today thinking about what this type of learning could look like in a remote setting. So our next question is for Christine. What are you envisioning that arts integration may look like when taught online or in a hybrid environment?
Well, I listened to a webinar recently, and the speaker said, it's okay for us to mourn the loss of live, large ensemble experiences for a moment. But then let's move on to the possible. What can we embrace now? Through virtual experiences involving the arts, we have an opportunity to focus on the individual learner. So since we're not operating in real time, we can invite every question and comment, not just hear 2 or 3 students with their hands up. We can focus on learner strengths by offering choice. They can submit written responses, video answers, take a photo of a drawing, and we can actually increase the possibilities with for our assignments because we can eliminate transition time, that pesky passing out of materials, and just focus on the product. One big bonus is knowing that we help make opportunities for students to experience the arts outside of school walls, which may not have, we may not have done that so much before. We have an opportunity here to increase our reach in our students' lives.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Of course, all of us in the arts world, and not just the arts world, but all across education, are considering how to deliver content and what school will look like in the fall. And there are some great opportunities there, like you said, to gain access and provide student choice and do some really, really innovative, out-of-the-box type thinking things with Arts Integration Online. Amanda also commented that, we have a lot of questions here. We'll try to answer a couple if we can before we leave today's session, but we will get answers to all of your questions. We'll figure out a way to do that for all of you. Our last panel question is for Allison, and this one is related to funding or maybe not, depending on the types of resources you find. So Allison, what resources are available to support materials and professional learning and teaching artists, all the things that you've been able to experience as a teacher at Bartlett Elementary through arts integration? So tell us a little bit about the resources that you've come across and that you're using.
Yeah, well, we've had the grant in the past. We've had PTO support. If there's ever a project that I really need help with, I can go to them. I've gone to businesses before. They've provided supplies. Trying to think, like companies. Like Crayola, we've had trainings with them. We've received materials and ideas to introduce to teachers. And then I believe Amanda created a resource. Is it like a list of different? Can you speak on that, Amanda?
Sure. It's really more of a content list rather than funding and supplies, but that will be shared at the conclusion of our webinar session today. It's just a follow-up list of some organizations within Tennessee and beyond who have developed some great arts integration and arts-based content learning that can be picked up and implemented in both in-person and online classrooms.
Yeah. And then I also, every year, I do a fundraiser, Square One Art, and we raise money in our community. And that really helps boost our materials. And so we have a lot of high quality materials that we can share with the school. So,
Allison, as a follow-up, I know you mentioned art carts earlier. Could you explain how those came to be and how you utilize those in BES?
Yes. Well, we got a significant amount of funding through a grant, and a certain part of that was set aside for supplies. So we did the bulletin boards that we talked about earlier, as well as every grade level got a cart, like a rolling cart, and I asked teachers what they thought their grade level would be using based on the art integration projects that they're already doing, as well as ideas that they have like in mind for that school year and beyond. And so I just took all of those supplies and just put them almost like a big old Christmas present. And we had this big cart giveaway. So every cart, every grade level got a cart and did inventory. And yeah, we spent a couple of years, I think over 3 years. The first year was like our big shipment where they got their paper and all the glue and Sharpies. And then the following years were just refreshing the carts as needed. And it was a good way for teachers to experience the materials before actually buying it, kind of figuring out what types of paint they like before actually spending their own personal money on that. So it helped them get their feet wet, and they still have those materials available, the ones that are, is it the consumable, non-consumable, but they have them, year after year. And I believe a lot of teachers are just buying art supplies on their own. I know some teachers buy acrylic paint because they do a certain project every year, but then they can use the brushes on the card and the water cups and plates and all that. So, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see, I know, Brad, we are running a little short on time, but I think we might be able to get to 1 or 2 questions in the comment. I'll start with a general question, and I think this could go to Amber, Christine, or Allison, whoever wants to tackle it. Heather asks, how do you emphasize student in arts integration lessons?
I missed like one word of that. How do we emphasize
student choice in arts integration lessons?
Well, I mean, my students get to, turn certain times of day or certain colors, certain designs, certain styles. So in my classroom, it's easy for them to make their own artistic decisions.
I think I referred to the use of student instruments to sort of like word paint, or, to emphasize certain words in a story or moments in a story. It's great to have a variety of instruments that are just those easy handheld, unpitched percussion, like the vibra-slap, or just, sticks, rhythm sticks, or a wood block for knocking on the door. And when those are available, the students can choose, I'll say, well, who wants to do the sound of the wavy grass, and then hands go up. And then I might ask them, well, which instrument do you think would make the best sound for the wavy grass? So not only do they make a choice, but then they must be able to defend their choice. That way I can assess their understanding of what's happening in the story or new vocabulary words. And they get to be creative and express themselves verbally and with music.
Great, thank you both. And one last quick question, and then we're going to do our giveaway before we end this morning's session. Christine and Allison, I know both of you have middle school teaching experience, and Nicole asked the question of what are some of your ideas on integrating the arts in the middle school setting, and especially consider students who aren't enrolled in an art class or a music class. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the same that it would be like if you're reading a novel. I'm not too fresh on a middle school curriculum, but you could easily pull out the watercolor paints and give them the assignment of illustrate this scene or this character. And you can even pull up step-by-step tutorials if you're not familiar with, the facial proportions or the anatomy of a certain, animal or, body type. So there's a lot of resources out there for just for the drawing aspect. But in art history, anytime my teacher would flash up an image, he'd say, okay, quickly sketch it out. And so you can remember the information paired with the image. And it just ingrained in my mind that quick sketch. And he was moving on to the next slide. So we had to take the basic bare bone information and just sketch it out real quick. And that's just an easy, quick way for that to embed into that child's brain. So just easy, simple ways. It doesn't need to be paint. It can just be pencil on their notebook paper next to their notes.
And even though I teach music, I've got a special interest in drama, and we've been trained on the use of tableau in academic settings. And a tableau is a frozen scene where the students get up and act out what might be happening at any point in a story or in a song, or you could use it for anything. This allows them to make the shape with their body and also have some interaction with their fellow students. And I have seen students reenact the demonstrations and marches of Dr. Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights Movement. And you can really gauge their understanding, much like what they did in the water dance slide that I showed, through their body shapes and their facial expressions. And I remember that would be great for any grade level. That CBRT that I'm so in love with will work, throughout the curriculum. Students can always write a script about a new concept that they've learned, and then in the repetition of practice, solidify that understanding. And I remember a great project that I had this amazing teacher when I was in middle school. In the gifted class, that now they call it Apex, but we called it Clue with the Memphis City Schools. And we retold some of the literature that we had read using musical underscore or adding musical snippets in between the narration. And I remember I told the story of, is it the Odyssey or the Iliad, the journey, right? And I remember that the Eurythmics song, Talking to an Angel, was really popular right then. And I used that for the sound of the sirens as they went through the sea. And I've never forgotten that moment. And when I see it referred to other times, I hear that in my mind. So my teacher may or may not have known the term arts integration, but I think that that's evidence to the fact that it can really create a deep learning connection and a memory that stays with our learners.
I just found some questions from the live stream. Do we want to answer those now, or do we? wait, because I can answer these very quickly.
I think with our time, Allison, we may need to pause and go in and type the answers back into the live stream, but we can talk over lunch about how to do that. Brad, do you want to talk about the Arts Academy giveaway?
Yes, this is very exciting. So we've reached the end of our formal part of our first session today. Christine, Amber, Allison, thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful information and years of knowledge and experience. I know that our participants have learned a lot from all of you today. It's obvious the work you put into organizing your material, and I thank you all so much for being here today and presenting. I apologize for not being able to see my slides at the beginning of today's presentation. I'll make sure you get access to those one way or the other. I could see them changing on my screen, but you could not, I understand. So we're going to do a giveaway now for a tuition waiver for the Tennessee Arts Academy, which is taking place, like I said earlier, online this year. This waiver is worth $395, which is huge for us and for whoever is going to win. So how we're going to do this is that Amanda is going to choose a number. We have about 450 people registered today.
Brad, we're up to 464.
464.
Yes.
Alexa, this is Alexis Derryberry. She's the president-elect of Tennessee Music Ed Association. I want all of you to know there are so many talented, wonderful people working today to make this workshop happen, and she is definitely one of those people. So Alexis, thank you for that update. So Amanda's going to choose a number, and then Alexis will announce our winner.
All right, Alexis, are you ready?
Everybody give a drum roll.
So I have a very special 7-year-old. I'm doing a number inspired by his birthday. So registrant number 308, whoever you are, you will get an opportunity to attend the Tennessee Arts Academy Elementary Theater track, which is the focus of the Arts Integration track. Congratulations. And thank you to the Arts Academy for providing that wonderful prize.
And that is Rhonda Chantrine from Joseph Brown Elementary in Maury County.
Congrats, Rhonda.
Woohoo!
All right, Rhonda, we will get you some information on how to get registered and signed up for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's very exciting that we are able to give some things away today. And we definitely thank the folks at the Tennessee Arts Academy for making that wonderful prize available to us today. So now we are taking a short break. We will see you all back. I would suggest you come back around 12:25. That's Central Time USA. But we do have some people online from India. Come back around that time, and then we'll get started at 12:30 p.m. with our weekly Arts Can session. Before we go, I do want to remind you of a couple of things. Make sure to use the hashtag TNArtsIntegration and hashtag Arts Are Essential as you are discussing today's workshop online. And then this afternoon at 4 p.m. Central Time, I want to remind you of a very special Keeping the Beat session, music education post-COVID-19, using the arts to unite communities and schools during uncertain times. You can access that live stream right here where you are today on Facebook at Keeping the Beat by TNMEA. Alexis will be on that session today, also with Dr. Julie Hill from UT Martin, Todd Shipley from the Tennessee Department of Education, and Leif Cook, who's the current president of the Tennessee Music Ed Association. You'll definitely want to tune in for that very important workshop today at 4 p.m. Central Time. And that wraps up our morning session. Do we have anything else to share before we take our break?
I think that's good.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Make sure you come back in about an hour and we'll get started with the weekly Arts Can. Thank you.